And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel.
So if you look at this, you can see it's got this curved lip on it right here. And it's not a crock. It's something else. And it's strange to find something like this out here. What is this doing out here in the spring, out in the wilderness? It's a spring house. The early farmers used to, whenever they found a spring, build a house around it, a small house, and then they would take crocks full of buttermilk and milk and whatever else they needed to be preserved, and they would kind of push it down in the mud, and the spring water would kind of flow through it, and it would cool down the food product, and it would cool the air enough to where you could hang stuff in there and preserve it. And the fact that I found this right here means that that's definitely what it was. Why else would somebody come out here to the wilderness and lug stone crocks only to throw them in the creek? The prairie looks beautiful today, like always, and I just found a horseshoe. No, a pony shoe. Yeah, look how small that is. And I wonder if they had a pony hooked up to a cart and they would use it to go down and bring stuff back up to the house from the spring. And if you think about it, ponies are able to do work. They're pretty strong and they don't eat very much. They're also easy for kids to handle. You hear that? Listen. Yeah, it says 1 cent on it. Pretty good find. Let's see. I can't tell. Yeah. Yep. It's an Indian head. That's the first Indian head I've ever found. I can't read the date, but there it is, just as plain as day. Look at that. It's like believing that something can happen makes it more likely to happen if and only if it was your initial disbelief that it would not happen that prohibited you from putting forth the effort to make it happen. Yeah. I never thought that I would find coins on farms because there's so much junk and there's so many weeds and thorns and it's so hot, or it's, you know, all the excuses, but it looks like you can find coins on farm. This is a good find. This is some old barbed wire, like 1800s style barbed wire. It's got these arrows on it. So if you look at this barbed wire, you can see those weird looking arrows, those spurs coming out. This is from like the 1800s. When this stuff was first invented around 1870, there was such a huge demand for it that entrepreneurs scrambled to circumvent the original patent, and they came up with just 100 different variations of this stuff. And that's why people collect it, because it's collectible. There's so many different styles. And it was known back then as the Devil's Rope. And so I imagine that the early farmers had to come down here and put their milk in the spring house every day. Milk doesn't last but a day or two unrefrigerated. So having your own spring with ice cold water coming up out of the ground where you could put the milk in, that must have been heavenly, especially in the summertime. It's also nice to have like clean drinking water that wasn't contaminated with anything. Absolutely wonderful to be able to find a spring. And that's the only way that there would be broken crocks in the spring, because these things invariably broke over the years. You see this right here? Is that a ribbon snake? I think it is. It's alive. It's just cold. This snake is alive. It's just 40 degrees out right now. Yeah, it's 40 degrees, so this thing is dormant. Here we have a snake, the Devil's Rope, the root of all evil, and the water of life. And so that's too perfect. Once upon a time, there were two naked people and a talking snake. And they lived in a world where everything was perfect and everything was easy and they never needed anything. And then one day there was an incident where they listened to the flawed logic of the talking snake, and their involvement in that incident allowed them to understand the concept of evil. And since they now understood the concept of evil, they became more human, and their state of perfection in the perfect world was revoked. It was lost. And so, since the state of the perfect world was lost, they now experienced dire needs that they never had before. And they had to take up farming. And the world became chaos. And you had to work, you had to figure out how to get dirt and water and the earth to bring forth a life. And ever since then, humans have been trying to get back to that state, that perfect state, in every advancement in technology, no matter what it was. Most advancements in technology were geared towards allowing us to go back to everything being nice and good and easy, and we don't need anything, and everything works and everything's good. I love digging deep iron because it's always something old. So, I already dug this stuff up. I just put it back in the hole for dramatic effect because it's just impossible to dig and film and dig. But this is the top of a stove. It looks like it's a parlor stove. Look at this right here. That's amazing. Let me get a close-up of that. Look at this. This is like one of the highlights of my metal detecting career. This has a flower on it. And it has this wire on it that they use to pull it open. Because when you're using this, it gets super, super hot. And you can't touch this at all, otherwise it's just searing. But I wonder who put this little twisty wire on it. And I wonder who picked out this stove. Do you think it might have been her? If you look at this family, they lived here back 1850s, 1860s, they lived here. And they had a farm here, and since that has that feminine design on it, I think it may have been her. And it's a strange feeling to dig something up and think that I know who this came from. It's just crazy. Anyway, the woman's name, to put it in perspective how old it is, the woman's name was Arethusa. Haven't heard a name like that in a while. And the man's name was Vivalda and Arethusa. I mean, this looks like something that she would own. So here we have the original family that lived on the farm back in the 1850s and 60s, the farm with the spring house. And they actually had 9 kids, but 5 of them died young. 4 of them died as children, probably from sickness, and 1 died fighting in the war in 1862. Now, I was able to figure out the names of the rest of the people in this picture by reading the dad's will, and the dad died in 1871. And so apparently Jeremiah here, he got $1,000 cash when his dad died. The oldest daughter, Cordelia, she got $25. And I don't know why. Why was there such a difference? Did they have a falling out? Did they have a disagreement? Maybe it was because she was already married by that time and her husband was well off. Here's a picture of her and her husband later in life. But she got $25. The young boy here, Alonson, he got $500. And the youngest surviving daughter, she didn't get any cash, but she did get money when the farm was sold. And the profit was divided up 3 ways between these 3 kids, but not the girl, not Cordelia. Now, the father was a very loving, kind man. In his will, he left $500 to the local church to buy a church bell. He also made it very clear that his wife was to be taken care of and comfortable and provided for. And interestingly, in the will, he specifically said that she was to have some of the horses that were on the farm. And one of the horses was named Nancy. Another was Nancy Ann. Another was Kit. And lastly, there were Kate. Also of interest, when this guy died, someone owed him money for 36 pounds of butter, several wagon loads of apples, and a couple shipments of chicken. So the farm seemed like it was a good place to be, but they just did not know anything about antibiotics and vaccines. Also, on the will, there was a list of everything on the farm that was worth money and could be sold. And on that list was the exact words, a pile of rubbish. A pile of iron on the farm must have been worth money to someone, and that would have been sold to support the wife and family. And so this right here, since I found it 2 feet down with other scraps of iron, this may be what's left of that pile of rubbish. So I guess the moral of the story is that it's not the Garden of Eden. There's pestilence and disease. People have to farm figuratively or literally. And if you work hard, if you use your sweat and your intellect and your heart to provide for your family, then you will push the momentum of the world towards the side of good. And if you do that, you may someday be judged on your performance. And after reading the will, after reading every single word of the will, I see that they did it. They actually did it. This man and this woman, they beat the snake.